Today I want to share with you an easy no-roll sourdough crackers recipe using discarded sourdough starter. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. If you're like me and you don't like to waste anything, you're probably always looking for recipes for what to do with your discarded sourdough starter. In the past, I've shared other recipes with you for how to make pancakes, how to make flatbreads, how to make toppings for casseroles, and I'll be sure to link to those in the description underneath this video as well as in the iCards. Now today I want to share with you how to use your discarded sourdough starter to make crackers. And these are so easy because there's no rolling of dough involved. Now, if you're new to sourdough and you don't even have a sourdough starter yet, but that's something that you're interested in learning how to make, I have a number of videos where I show you how to make sourdough starter using different types of flour. And I'll be sure to link to those videos as well in the description below and in the iCards. And in one of those videos, I go over a lot of the problems that can arise when you're making a sourdough starter, and I show you how to fix those problems. So if you've ever tried to make sourdough starter in the past and you felt a little challenged by it, be sure to check out that video. Now, if you keep your sourdough starter on the counter and you're feeding it every day, you're building up a lot of discard because you're removing some, which is what we call the discard, before you go ahead and feed it with fresh flour and water. Now, you can certainly save your discard in your refrigerator up to about a week or two, and then when you have a nice large amount that you like, you can go ahead and use that in various recipes. But if you've just taken out about a cup or a cup and a half or so of your starter before you go to feed it and you want to make something quick, this cracker recipe is perfect. Now, I tend to keep a lot of starter because I do like to use and bake with just my sourdough starter, so that's why I have a pretty healthy amount here. Now, what I've done is I've removed about a cup and a third of my starter and put it into a bowl. So this is my discarded sourdough starter. Now, you don't need to write anything down because if you open the description under this video, you'll see the word recipe with a link next to it. And if you click on that, it'll take you over to my website, same name as my YouTube channel, Mary's Nest, and you can read the recipe online or you can print it out. Now, I have a 100% hydration sourdough starter. And what that means is that I generally try to feed it with equal parts water and flour. Now, as you know, if you've been with me a while, you know I don't weigh anything. And so all I do is scoop the flour into my measuring cup and then measure some water, 1 cup each, and that's approximately weighing about the same amount. And a 100% hydration starter works really well in this recipe. Now, if your starter leans on the thicker side and you want to make these crackers, when you go to feed it a day or two before you want to make these crackers, just try to get it up to about 100% hydration. And you would do that simply by feeding it equal parts water and flour. And I just want to make one quick point for those of you who keep your sourdough starter in the refrigerator and maybe only remove it once a week to feed it and make bread, or just feed it and put it back in your fridge. If you want to use your discard to make these crackers, just allow it to come up to room temperature. So we've got a cup and a third of our discarded sourdough starter in here, and we're going to go ahead to that, and we're going to add a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Now, if there are other oils you like baking with, like coconut oil, you can definitely use that as well. It just will give the crackers a little bit of a different flavor. Now, I've got 2 teaspoons of sea salt in here, and I'm just going to measure out about a teaspoon, and I'm going to go ahead and add that right into our batter. And I'm just going to save this other teaspoon and set it aside because if we want to sprinkle a little salt on top of the crackers, we'll have that handy. Then what I've got here is some dried rosemary. Now, you can use any herb flavorings you like. You could use Italian seasoning, which would be wonderful. You could use herbes de Provence. You could use thyme, anything like that. You could use just plain oregano if you didn't want to do the full-blown Italian seasoning. It's really up to what taste you like. I really like doing these with olive oil and rosemary. So I've got 2 teaspoons here. Again, like the salt, I've just got a little extra in case we want to sprinkle some on top of the crackers. And I'm just going to go ahead and put that dry rosemary into my hand and sprinkle that into, just kind of crush it up a little and sprinkle that into our batter here. Now we're going to go ahead and mix this up, but you want to make sure that you've preheated your oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is around 160 degrees Celsius, maybe a few degrees above 162, 163. I'm not sure if you have an oven that goes by Celsius, if you can adjust it to such an exact temperature, but it's about 160 degrees Celsius. Now all you need to do is get a whisk and just give all this a good whisking until everything is thoroughly incorporated and you don't see any of the oil pooling. And you just want to mix this. It's going to take about 30 seconds until you see no oil pooling. Alrighty, now I'm going to set everything aside for a minute and I'm going to get a baking sheet. And this is going to be perfect for making our crackers. Next, you're going to want to get some parchment paper, and it's fine for it to be a little larger than your baking sheet because this will keep everything contained and nothing dripping over. Next, we're just going to pour this out onto our parchment paper. And I just wanted to mention that my sourdough starter is one that I feed with a variety of flours. It's really whatever I have on hand. So whatever type of sourdough starter you have is going to work fine for this recipe. So just pour everything out onto your parchment paper and then we're going to just smooth it out. Then next, you can use your spatula, or if you have one of these little offset knives that are generally used for icing, these work perfect for just spreading out your batter. And you just want to spread this to the end of your baking sheet and just get it as thin as you can. And once you get it all smoothed out best you can to the corner, to each of the corners of your baking sheet, you're all set. Now, if you don't have parchment paper, can you use aluminum foil? Yes, but I'll give you a tip coming up as to when you take the next step, you're going to want to do things a little differently. And can you just put it directly on your baking sheet? Yes, but you just need to be a little careful. You may want to add a little extra oil or maybe a little butter just to ensure that nothing sticks. Okay, now if we want, we can sprinkle a little extra salt and some extra rosemary on top. And I like to do that. I think it adds another layer of flavor to the crackers. So I'm just going to go ahead and just lightly sprinkle some of this sea salt on top. Really, it's a matter of how much salt you like on your crackers. Do you like it kind of heavy, sort of like saltines, or just something a little lighter? It's really up to you. Then I'm going to take a little extra rosemary. I'm not going to overdo it, just a little bit, because you always have to be a little careful with rosemary. If you use too much, you can start having that kind of soapy flavor that some people say that they can taste, and we definitely don't want that. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit. I'm going kind of light on this. Now we're going to go ahead and pop this into our 325 degree Fahrenheit oven and let this bake for 30 minutes. Now, after baking in the oven for 30 minutes, we're going to take these crackers out of the oven, but they're not done yet. You'll notice that if you touch them, they still feel a little soft. But the reason that we're going to take them out of the oven is because if you want these to be actual square crackers, you're going to take them out at this 30-minute time and take either a sharp knife, or if you've got one of these pizza cutters, it works great. And we're going to start just scoring these, and then we're going to put them back in the oven. Now, if you've done this on aluminum foil or directly onto your baking sheet, you may want to skip this part unless you worked very gently. The alternative is that you're just going to leave your crackers in the oven for the full 1 hour, because we're going to bake them for another 30 minutes after we go through this part of scoring them. You can just leave them in the oven for the full 1 hour, and then once they're baked and crisped, you can just break them into rustic looking pieces. So either way is fine, and I'll have all of this explained in the instructions in the written recipe. Now I often like to just break these up and have them looking rustic, but that can look very cute on a charcuterie platter. But since some people may want to actually have these look like nice square crackers, I want to go ahead and show you how to do that. Now, don't worry if when you take your crackers out of the oven after the first 30 minutes and they've already started cracking in places, that's really difficult to avoid, so don't worry about it. So some of your crackers may not be perfectly square when you're done with this, but the reason that happens is it's actually a good sign that we've spread our batter thin enough and that it's starting to shrink up and bake so that it will be crisp when everything's done. But in any event, so get your pizza cutter or a sharp knife and then just start scoring this. You don't have to go deep through, to the bottom of your paper. And as I said, if you did use aluminum foil or you're doing this directly on your baking sheet, you want to be real careful about that. Well, I've got these all scored best that I could. I just eyeballed it. If you want to be very exact, you can definitely use a ruler and get them to just the size that you want. But I basically followed lines that had already started to form from cracks. And so I'm going to go ahead and now put these back in the oven. Now, everybody's oven is different. And the thinness or the thickness of what you've spread onto your baking sheet, although we are trying to use 1 1/3 cups of our discard, there are some variations when it comes to finishing these off. Generally, it takes about 30 minutes for them to reach the perfect crispness, but I highly recommend that you start checking them at about 15 minutes. They may need the whole 30 minutes, but start checking them at about 15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these back into our 325-degree Fahrenheit oven, and we'll check them in 15 minutes. If they need a little more time, we'll leave them for the full 30 minutes. Well, I checked these at 15 minutes, but they were not ready yet, so I continued to leave them in the oven, and then just at about maybe 27 minutes, they looked a perfect golden brown, so I took them out of the oven. Now, what you want to do is let these cool completely before you start to break them apart. Now, if you've taken them out at that 30-minute mark and you've scored them, they're going to break apart very easily. If you've not scored them and you've just left them in the oven for the whole time cooking in one sheet, then you can just start, once they're cooled, you can just start breaking them off into rustic pieces. Well, we'll give one a taste, and I just want to show you how beautifully crisp they are. Alrighty, let's give this a taste. So crunchy, so tasty. I love the salt and the rosemary, and I think you're going to love these too. Well, if you'd like more recipes for how to use your discarded sourdough starter, be sure to click on this video over here, where I've got lots of fun recipes that are very easy to make, just as simple as making these crackers. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.